Oh, we're live. So, welcome, jamplay.com. Dave Brown here. It is week number 6 of practicing fundamentals, and we're having some technical difficulties. So, hopefully, we're cool. We're going to try and push on through. But if we have to stop this, we'll do it right. We'll get it to you. Sorry again for last week. I missed you guys. Some family stuff, but hopefully you had enough to practice from the weeks prior. This is, like I said, week number 6. Timing and groove we're working on this week as far as fundamentals go. This is definitely one of the most important things to practice that very few players sit down and actually practice. It's sometimes it probably comes off as like what you would do is even more than simple than, you think you're progressed, you think you're doing better. But there's some really basic stuff that you'd be surprised that you think you're a good player and some really simple. That's the kind of thing we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to jump right in. Jason's man in the helm. He's happy to answer any questions for you, or I'm sure he'll answer some too, but technically the questions for me, he'll send them over. That's what I was getting at, and then I will answer them for you. Again, sorry if there's any technical difficulties. I know there was on Thursday. We're doing it. We're going for it. Appreciate it. So we're going to jump right in on page 1. And basically, just to get started, what we're going to do is we're just going to establish subdivisions against a click. Now, this is going to seem super basic, maybe even annoyingly simple to some of you, but it's important. Some really good players will get warmed up just playing quarter notes, Bassist from Snarky Puppy, I know I was talking about it the other day, this video I was watching. It's not to be overlooked, essentially. So we're going to kind of stick around 80 beats per minute today in a couple different forms. We're going to start off with quarter notes. Let me just go over the general subdivisions, how you would count these, just in case none of you are familiar with this, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So again, you got 4 measures up at the top 2 lines. First one's quarter notes, second one's 8th notes, third one's triplets, fourth one's 16th notes. So if this is your click, just kidding, that's what we're going to later. Put it to 80 beats per minute. So if this is your click, and you're just playing quarter notes. Now again, this is irrelevant. You can do an open string. Let me just say something really quick. One of the reasons why this is important to even keep it simple, like for instance, you could practice this with a scale, and we will. But why would you just play an open note? Like obviously, I would assume most of you think you're better than just playing an open note. The reason being is because some of your accuracy and timing and groove will hinder on how loose you are, how comfortable you are playing. So if you're tensing up in your right hand, you're not going to be able to accurately hit notes consistently over and over and over again. And that's an issue. And that's something you won't necessarily address if you jump right into scales, because what happens is, you're so worried about what's happening on the left hand that there's too much information coming at you. You might even be thinking about what's for dinner or whatever. Like you got a lot of things running through your head and you're worried about the left hand. All of a sudden, you just, 5 minutes gone by, 10 minutes gone by, and you realize you haven't thought about your right hand at once. And that's an issue, serious issue. So that's why it's good to kind of just play an open note or a fretted note, as we're going to do today. But even an open note, to keep it even simpler, it just depends on what you want to do. What we're going to do is play the 7th fret on the 4th string. Sorry, I prefer to play with my ring finger, but fingers irrelevant today. Basically, I picked a fretted note just because it's kind of easier to control the tone and the dynamics of it rather than an open string. So just something minuscule things to think about when you're doing this. So I'm just going to make sure everyone's on the same page for quarter notes, 8th notes, triplets, and 16ths, how to count them, how to play them, what they sound like against a click. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and kind of play basically like 2 minutes straight on each one. Sounds boring, but it's very important. So let's just get it out of the way. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to go quarter notes, obviously, are just on the click over and over again. All downstrokes for quarter notes. That's pretty self-explanatory. Eighth notes are going to fit one in between. And I can't stress this enough. The most important thing to walk away from today, besides everything that I'm telling you, is the foot, okay? So what you're going to find, especially when we start to do the subdivision transitions, that they'll mess your foot up. And by messing up your foot, that messes up your time completely. And so that's a fundamental flaw in your playing. If you can't keep your foot going, you don't know exactly what a triplet feels like against it, you don't know exactly what a 16th note feels like, you don't know exactly what the transition between 16th notes and triplets feels like. So it's very important to not mess your foot up, which means, some of you, your time will be best spent literally just playing subdivisions against a clique, especially with the 4-on 4-off thing. That'll put anybody in their place. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, let's get back at it. So if you're tapping your foot with eighth notes, you're going down on the number and up on the and. So every click is a number. So you're like 1, 2. Those were the quarter notes. So you're fitting one in between. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, triplets are going to fit 3. Okay, so what you would say is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and what you're doing is you're going down, up, 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 down, up. And, alternate picking protocol would say down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. So that's worth practicing too. I just think most of you will feel a little more comfortable with it down, up, down, up, down, up. Although that might mess with your foot a little bit because you're going up when your foot goes down. So it's a little awkwardness, like patting your head and rubbing your belly. But we'll get through the awkwardness. That's why we're here. 16th notes, you say 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. P.S. with the triplets, if you're having trouble counting 1 and a 2 and because some of my students will have trouble with that right off the bat if you're just learning them, simply count to 3 and place a 1 on each click. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And so you'll find you might need to do a little adjustments. And if you're doing that by just saying things, then that means you're definitely doing it when you're playing. So again, these are fundamental flaws that you probably overlook on a daily basis that will really, really, really help your playing. 16th notes, 1E and a 2E and a. So 16th notes are just 8 notes twice as fast. No, nothing crazy there. Good. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a. Great, wonderful. So that's it. So I'm gonna put that click on, and we're gonna do a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes of each of those, and then we'll move on. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. Let me get a timer going so I don't annoy you during the process when I get that going. Okay, who's ready? Who's thrilled? This guy. Here we go. Starting it. 1, 2, quarter notes, go. And again, what you're doing is, it's not as passive as you think. You want, right now I'm palm muting. Now I'm not, obviously. What you want is consistently hitting it in accurate tone. And notice my right hand's planted, and it's just kind of moving from the wrist and going right through the string. So that you plucking the string should be an inadvertent process of the pick kind of just forcing its way to the ground and it goes through the string. You're not worried about specifically striking the string. Your hand is just moving and it happens to hit the string. A little Zen philosophy for you, apparently. Okay, so we've got a request for a little less metronome. Sorry, I'm just going to cut it off there. That was about 1.5 minutes. Hopefully that's a little better. I can take it down a little more if you want to. Just let me know. Okay, we're going to go to eighth notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and... So I'm kind of inadvertently emphasizing the downbeat. And we'll talk about emphasizing beats, different beats later, because that's part of the groove. But if you want, you can try and just keep it nice and steady. Like in a perfect world, you would want to be able to, like if you were recording yourself direct in, playing along with this metronome, if you turn the metronome off, you would not want to hear any variance in tone or dynamics. You can practice that, that's a whole nother thing. So like, so that's worth it in itself right there too, especially if you're getting a little bored. A little bit more. All right, we're gonna go to triplets after this next measure. 1, 2, 3, here we go. Sorry, I was thinking of something. Hold up. Let me do it again. What I was gonna say, it's harder to talk with triplets than it is eighth notes. What I was gonna say, if your right hand is cramping up, it's okay to kind of relax it and start back from the beginning. Acknowledge that tension. Sorry, I can't talk and play at the same time, apparently. Give it a couple more and then go to sixteenths. Here we go, sixteenths now. Especially with sixteenths, you can start to emphasize each downbeat. A little longer. little more. Actually, two more. Last one, here we go. Okay. Let's shut up that annoying click just for a second. Shake it out. Okay. You want to get comfy. Been in quarantine too long. I got to work on this gut. You want to get comfy with the right hand, okay? So, again, if the tension's building up, that's an issue, and you want to back off, and you want to go back to ground zero where you don't really have any tension. Because the thing is, if you're tense all the time, you're never going to notice. But if you take the time to practice something simple where you can just bring it back to no tension, you'll start to be more conscious of it. And if you're more conscious of it, you'll try and figure out ways, you'll realize, you'll make specific efforts to be more relaxed. Easier said than done, definitely. But that's the process. Okay, so now that we're warmed up, we're going to do exercises number 1 and number 2. We're just going to do number 1. I hope it was updated in time, but basically we're on the third line down, doing eighth notes to triplets, okay? And we're going to go just one at a time, obviously, but we're also going to apply it to a scale in a second as well, just because why not? Once we're warmed up. But we're sticking on a single note. You already know what eighth notes are. What I would recommend, again, you're trying not to mess up your foot. That is the most important thing. I know we don't got a camera on my foot, but it's the most important thing to keep track of besides the tension in your right hand and the accuracy. There's a lot of things to keep track of. No pressure, okay? But basically, we're going to tap, and I want you to count, okay? So, for instance, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the reason why I want you to keep track of the downbeats, because some of you might have a good feel of what 2 bars feels like, or 1 bar feels like, or 4, 8. Music is symmetrical. You want to feel the symmetry, and some of you probably already feel that pretty well. You could definitely do this over a drum beat as well, but able to nail it with just a click is pretty important. So the reason why I bring up the drum beat is because you would not have to worry about the symmetry as much. You could just kind of hear it and feel it, as opposed with a click. It's a little vaguer. Vaguer? Is that a word? Sure. But yeah, we're going to do it with eighth notes of triplets, and I'm going to count out loud for you. You should count out loud too. You should tap your foot. Hopefully it doesn't mess up too hard. Here we go. Here's exercise number 1 with the eighth notes of the triplets. So it's going to go 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Definitely possible. Sorry, we're getting a little too much metronome. Hopefully that's better. 1 and 2 and 3. So yeah, let's just start that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Forgot I had an emphasized downbeat. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, let's try 16th notes to triplets. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and a 40, and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Sorry. 1, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 1. I messed up. Sorry, guys. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Want to keep going those 16th notes. 16th. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, if we have some more time, we'll come back and we'll do a little more. But you hopefully get the idea. Basically, why I developed these exercises, or just kind of like to practice them. Little personal history, I think I mentioned it earlier with the bends because I have back issues. When I was in college, going to school for jazz, I went skiing my sophomore year and I messed up my shoulder, and it was really messed up for a long time. And my right hand suffered because of it, because it was my right shoulder, and I really had to compensate with my left hand, and it never really got great, and I never, again, because I'm still working on it. But basically the moral of the story is I had to, between teaching and gigging, and having a messed up shoulder, I basically only had enough time and enough willpower because of the pain in the back to only practice a certain amount of hours a week. And unfortunately, that meant allocating it to the things I had to get done for students or for gigs, which means I didn't do this bare and bones stuff. And my timing suffered because of it. I had really crappy timing for a long time. I faked it till I made it, but it was bad. There was fundamental flaws and I didn't know how to fix it. And it wasn't until I discovered what we're going to talk about in a second that I realized how bad it was. And there was two fundamental flaws in my playing, which is probably the fundamental flaws with most players playing. One, is speeding up or slowing down in general, which if you have a click going non-stop, that's fine. But if you're just playing by yourself, is your internal clock running slow, running fast? It all depends. Did you just get in a fight with your brother or something? Not autobiographical at all. But or you're tired, whatever. There's plenty of things that can affect your concept of how fast something is or how slow something is. And so there's that, and then B is doing these transition exercises that when you move from triplets to 16th notes, I found that personally, and probably with a lot of you, that your concept of how fast that triplet should go or how fast that 16th should go is distorted. It's not accurate. And it takes you, generally speaking, it would take you maybe 1 or 2 clicks. I'm sure some of you noticing that right now. Maybe a couple clicks, maybe even a whole measure to kind of settle in. So if you're having if you're having a lot of trouble, doing these transitions, again, this is basic stuff. You don't necessarily need to sit down and practice with me. Just turn on a metronome and go, okay, I need more time to settle in, so I'm going to do 4 measures of eighth notes and then 4 measures of triplets, just so I can kind of settle in. Eventually, you got to fix that, though. It's got to be instantaneous to be a good player, regardless of how amazing the stuff you're going to play is. It doesn't. Even the simplest stuff needs to be in the pocket. You know what I'm saying? So, do as I say, not as I do. So, basically, that's the moral of the story. So with the warm-ups, again, we just did it on open string, but obviously you can practice your scales like that. That's a given. You can practice your scales with triplets. You can practice your scales with 16th notes. Let's just do exercise number 1 and 2, the transitions, with the classic pentatonic scale. So again, the idea is that you're going to transition wherever you happen to be. So you have to really be on the ball and paying attention to where you are in the measure. So for instance, if you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? Put 9s on this. I was using 8s, now I'm on 9s, and kind of 9s is a good balance between 10s and 8s, I think, for me. But thing is an intonation adjustment. Okay, so how rude of me. I'm assuming most of you know the minor pentatonic scale, but let's just review it really quick so we're all on the same page. Index finger on the 5th fret of the 6th string, pinky goes up to the 8th, then you go 1, 3, or 5 to 7 on the 5th string, same deal on the 4th string, same deal on the 3rd string. Then you're on the 2nd string with index and pinky again from 5 to 8, same deal on the 1st string. So 1, 2, and 6 are pinkies and index versus rings and index on strings 3, 4, and 5. So something to think about as far as speaking of symmetry, memorizing patterns, all that fun stuff. Bueno. So again, we're going to do exercise number 1. Let's go a little slower this time. We're going to drop it down just so you guys can really hang. Let's go to 70. 2, 3. So again, we got 2 bars of 8th notes, then 2 bars of triplets. 1, 2, here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1. Let's do one more round. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, shake it out. We're gonna do 16th notes going to triplets. Same exact deal. Let's go even slower. Let's go to 60. So you got 1E and a 1E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... Bueno. Who's ready? This guy. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. I got... Let me redeem myself, guys. For some reason, it's more difficult for me to... I keep wanting to, like, once you're on the 16th note plow through, you kind of want to keep it going, but we're better than that. We're going to do it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's good. As soon as I started. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna shut this up for a second. We got a question. Can you explain what it means to play off time? I've heard the term used, but I'm not sure what it means. So off time, probably the more correct term that you're referring to is on the off beat. Off beat just means when you put your foot in the air, anything, literally anything so there's the downbeat and then there's the offbeat, right? So the downbeat is when you say the number. And literally anything else that's not on that number is technically on the offbeat, okay? So in its simplest form, you can just think ands with eighth notes. So like, for instance, one, and one. And so when you play a lot on the offbeat, so for instance, funk, reggae, that kind of things, that's known as syncopation. It's a big fancy word that just means you're playing on the offbeat a lot. So a lot of those things, that's all it is. You're just playing on the offbeat. It's a little more difficult because you're not playing very simple things that need to land right on the downbeat. So it falls in between the space, so you really have to be a little more confident. Again, this kind of work of just understanding what the basic subdivisions are, and then there's plenty of, especially on jam play, I'm sure, of funk stuff, any reggae stuff. Jazz gets syncopated a lot too. Really, it's all gravy at the end of the day. Okay, so excellent question. Thank you for asking. So with everything that we've done so far, there's an exercise. I'm not really going to do it. I'm just going to tell you about it. I've talked about it in the Speaking in Rhythms course I did with jamplay.com. Really, what it really comes into play. It really does its service when it's literally just you and the metronome. Like, you can listen to me do it, but the problem is what it's trying to expose inconsistencies, and if two people are playing, they both have different inconsistencies, and so they're going to kind of mess with each other. But it's a this is what totally put me in my place and made me realize how messed up my timing really was. And what that is, I don't know if you can see this or not, probably not. I'm just going to switch over to this and see. Oh, you can a little bit. So this metronome that I'm using is called Time Guru, okay? It's a little, you can't really see it. You can't see that at all. So the two metronomes I like to use, one's called Tempo, one's called Time Guru. And you can do this with both. You need the paid version of both, I think. It's like $2-3. Totally worth it. What's nice about this Time Guru, both are on Droid or Apple, by the way, is you can do odd time signatures. So you could do like a bar of, like, for instance, 7/8 and a bar of 4, or a bar of 4 and 7/8, like Zeppelin's The Ocean is, or something like that. But what I really like first of all, you can do this gradual muting thing. So beats will just randomly drop. It's not that they're stopping, they're there, they're just ghosted, and so you don't hear it. And so it forces you to be that much, because what happens is, if you have a nonstop steady click going, it's encouraging to make yourself go on to autopilot, and because you can rely on it. And it's enough of a challenge in itself. But if you have that click going, you tend to rely on it. Or even if you're playing with a drummer or anything, like, you don't worry about your time as much, because you're kind of just like, they're just like dragging you along for the ride. So you don't really have to think about it. But if you randomly drop beats, or what I like to do is you can click 2 bars of 4. Sorry, 2 bars of 4 there. And then you can tap the second one. So this, you can't really see it, but you get the idea. The idea is that you have 4 beats on and then 4 beats off. So you got 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And you'll realize so I was rushing just slightly. So that process of doing 4 beats on, 4 beats off, You can get creative with it. You can do 2 beats on, 2 beats off. You can do 1 beat on, 3 beats off. Okay, but the idea is the 4 on 4 off is what's up, and the idea is that if any of that was even remotely difficult for you just now, like not difficult, but like just difficult in being consistent, then try with 4 on 4 off. It will put you in your place so quick. I've stood around like walking around a room for like 15 minutes just like playing quarter notes or even eighth notes. And, you know, again, if you're kind of frustrated from that day's work, or like, you know, you're worried about something or you're excited about something, your internal clock is going to be all over the place. So it really, really forces you to be present and in the moment and accountable. And that's really what this is all about. You know what I'm saying? So now that I said that, you know, maybe I'll demonstrate that a little more as we go on, if we have time. But we're about right where I want to be at. So we're going to move on to exercise number 3, which is at the bottom of that first page. And essentially, speaking of 4 on 4 off or that kind of concept, what we're going to do, what a lot of players do for like blues and jazz, is put the click on 2 and 4. Okay, so that doesn't mean you literally have to turn off beat 1 and turn off beat 3. Let's say you want to play at 80 beats per minute, because that's what we're going to do. You can set the metronome to 40. Okay, but what happens is, to most, especially white folks, you tend to want to hear that click as 1 and 3 right off the bat. It kind of messes with your head. So if I just put this on, most people are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is emphasize 2 and 4, which gives your playing a little bit of dynamics. This is getting into the more groove scenario of the timing and groove. Okay, and so the idea is, again, that you're emphasizing 2 and 4. So you have to, when you hear a click, you have to say a number right before. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it can take a second for you to maybe establish that. I know it messed with my head when I was first getting into jazz, but putting a click on 2 and 4 is really good. It kind of makes you really emphasize 2 and 4 inadvertently without even thinking about it. And that is good, because, you know, it's one thing to have accurate timing, but if you can't add like very specific dynamics to your playing, it'll miss that je ne sais quoi, you know what I'm saying? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that just straight, and we're going to emphasize 2 and 4 now with just eighth notes. We can do this with triplets and sixteenths, although I might have to come back to that, or just say, you know, it's not technically written out for you, but in theory you can do it. If we have time, we will, but let's just do the eighth notes. So 1, see, it already messed with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, here we go. So it's good. Okay, so we're on it. Let's just try triplets really quick, and then we'll move on. Promise. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Jason probably hates me for moving around so much. not bad. Just trying to get into, man. Okay, so you get the idea. That'll give you an opportunity to kind of not just play your scales the boring old way, like up and down, like really breathe some life into them like that, okay? Or, you know, we talked about dynamics before. You can even go like, you know, you can kind of ramp it up, bring it back down. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. All of it, the name of the game is control and accuracy, okay? So now we're getting into the groove side of the thing. And timing and groove they're almost synonyms, you know, especially if you're not really overthinking this. They can be. Timing is accuracy of notes, whereas groove is to be able to hold something down, something very specific. And, you know, especially for bass players, it's important because, you know, you're the foundation. But essentially, you're holding something down, again, and you might be trying to emphasize certain beats as well, so you're not just playing through it, but you're holding like a little motif meaning just a couple notes, like a lick, down, and, you know, being able to expand upon it and around it, but having that still be rock solid, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to keep it at 40, technically 80 beats per minute with the click on 2 and 4. And our simple groove at the top of the second page there is simply just going to be a G octave. So we're going to go dotted eighth note, so 1 E and up. 3, 4, and so let's hear it. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, and 3 and 4 and. And you can start to think about rhythms in between. Okay. So now, groove, and again, I'm kind of plowing through that a little bit. We're going to get into the fills a little bit. I'm going to assume that you can hold that down. What we're going to do is we're just going to add 1/8 note right before. Okay, so the second measure there where it says fill number 1 is technically just going to be a ghost note on the 6th string, but that's just really a placeholder just to kind of show you. We're going to add, I give you 3 different options after that, but really, preferably in the scale. Your 3 options are going to be this. You're going to go, so the first one's the 3rd fret on the 6th string, or I'm sorry, 4th string. And then the second one is going to be, so what that is, that's an F going up to the root. You can do that an octave below, so it would be like. And so what I'm going to do is slide a little bit as I come up to this note and then get back to that one. So. Okay, so that's the second option, and the third option is just gonna same thing but on the 5th string. So that's a flat 3. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that click back on, and I'm gonna play them. We'll play each one 4 times each. Okay. So we've already established the basic one, so we're just gonna do that 3rd measure in, 4th measure in, 5th measure in, 4 times each. Here we go. 1. So that's 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3, 4. Doing the next one. Here we go. 3. I did it. See the other one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of improvise using only that stuff. So sometimes I might just do the basic one, literally just. But now I'm going to throw some random stuff. Not random, it's one of those three. Okay, and so I should have mentioned it, but when you're at home, you can play along with me even though you don't know what I'm going to do, because literally we're all coming back in on the one, right? So even if you choose to go to the sixth string, when I choose to go to the fifth string, it's still going to work. It's still going to sound good. So it doesn't matter if you jam along with me and you don't know what I'm going to do. You get to choose it. And if you notice, I started to get, I won't call it bored, but I just started to throw some ideas in there just so you could kind of hear where this is going. We're going to slowly but surely build this up, okay? So we're going to try and take on fill number 2. Not Phil, the person, but the fill number 2. We're going to, just again, explore it. Again, it's just a specific rhythm. So literally you could play any note. So I might even deviate from these 3, but we'll go over these 3. And again, once we start to improvise, I'm going to mix fills 1 and fill 2 and just the basic groove. And I might even throw some other stuff in there as well. Just so you can kind of get the idea where this is going. That a concept that right around the time that I was getting the whole 4-on 4-off thing, I realized that I primarily think in left hand. I primarily think in notes, and it's rhythm first. James Brown used to like point at a guitar and go, "Hey, what instrument is that?" And obviously most people would say a guitar, but he would say a drum. Everything is rhythm first. And so if you can think in terms of rhythms like a Morse code language, and as long as you have physical accuracy on your left hand, like you practice your scales, you can really, you will never feel stranded or feeble. Like you'll always be confident at what you're about to play. Putting rhythm in the primary C and then the notes to follow, as opposed to the other way around. We're all guilty of it. Okay, so here's fill number 2. So it's 2/16 followed by an 8th, and then it's on beat 4. So it's basically what we just did, and 1, but da da da. Instead of da da da, it's gonna go da 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 da, right? So against that, well, let's go over it. So actually, before you even do those ones, let's just do that rhythm with the notes that we just had. So instead of, we're going to go down, up, down. Okay. Let's do the 6th string. To the 5th string. So you can do those simple versions of it too. They're not technically written out, but the notes are irrelevant. what I want is a very specific rhythm that you can execute every single time, regardless of what notes you're playing, and still come back to the motif, the groove, the say all end all. Okay, so so the ones that are going to be written here, let's go over those. That's a great idea, Dave. So fill number 2, the second measure in, it's going to go, if I can even read it from here, it's going to go second fret twice. Oh, I turned the beat around in it. 1, 2, what? 1, 2, 3. So I'm just sliding, using my first finger for both of them. See, even I started getting greedy. Okay, the second one in is 1, 2, 3. Same thing in reverse. Versus this first one. Okay, so the last one, sorry, it's gonna go third fret first, so it's like 1, 2, 3. So you notice. Even I mess up. Sometimes I want to throw all that busy stuff in between just to kind of fill it out for you and see where this is going, see what the bigger picture is, because right now we're just getting like pixelated mosaics, right? But we're filling in the groove slowly but surely. But, you know, technically, especially like you'll find with funk strumming, you want to kind of, a lot of players will keep that going nonstop, which is a cool sound, but really the specific nuance playing comes when you can avoid all those scrapes in between and just hit your one part. But since we've gone over those, let's do them 4 times each, okay? And then I'll start to mix and match, and then we're basically done. That's looking at the clock over there, that's what's clock on the wall says 3 o'clock. If you have any questions, shoot them over to Jason. If not, that's fine. No hard feelings. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'm sorry if there was any technical difficulties, but we didn't drop. Looks like we got through the whole thing. So next week will be Thursday. Thursday is the final. Is it the final? I don't know. Jamplay's got all the scheduling. Let's get on it. We're almost done. So, but 8 o'clock on Thursday, 8 o'clock on Tuesday. Come hang. All right, so 4 times each on measures 2, 3, and 4 of that last line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Other one. Final last one. Okay, and so what I'll say this really quick. These ones right here, you can also, or, so I might throw those in too. Let's go for it. Yeah, let's go for it really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. my timing sucks. Try to get aggressive. It can be a little restricting at some point, in the sense that there's only so much you can say. But even I like try to get fancy there, and I already dropped the group. Shame on me. But it just goes to show you that this is something that everybody should and could and practice all the time, including myself, especially myself. You know, again, it might feel a little restricting putting in fills and always coming back to that. You can figure it out in dollar octaves. It doesn't have to be this one motif. This is just something I came up for today. But the idea would be that, you know, maybe you can even do an expanded, come back every 2 bars. So like, boom, boom. You know, and just fill in the space in between. What really makes this even groove even harder is if you're able to throw in, you know, I kept it even, you know, either 8th notes or 16th notes, but if you throw some triplets in there too, you know, okay, I think that's last call. I think we're gonna cut me off, unless Jason's got anything he wants to add to this party. But thank you guys so much for hanging. We'll see you on Thursday, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard for. It's a blues. Okay, we got a blues. Yeah, I think this is the last week. How is this the last week? That's crazy. Time flies. But hopefully, everybody's safe and sound. We'll see you next time.